I'm joined by Michelle Aber-Giffen, my colleague from Meter Consulting, and we're happy to be online with you today to go through some of the practices and examples that you all have shared. And we also have some resources and a few items that we've located that we'd like to share with you as well. So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and jump in. Take a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll spend a few minutes just to see if any of you have any questions or comments or anything that you'd like to share with us or with your colleagues online. And then we'll jump into the examples and resources related to employability, entrepreneurship. I believe we had a couple other examples that you shared with us that aren't included here, as well as any program overviews that you shared about your programs. Then we'll have some feedback and discussion and talk about next steps. Before we get started on that, if you are sharing a computer connection with a colleague, if there's more than one of you logged in, please send us a note in the chat box or the question box, just so that we can make a note of that for attendance purposes. Just to let you know, and this has been in the newsletter, but in case you haven't seen it, there will be a wrap-up session for the discipline-based PLCs. That's your group, automotive technology, and cosmetology, and that will take place at this spring or the summer's PACTech conference, specifically on Wednesday, June 27th. Hans Meter from our firm will be facilitating a combined session for all three groups where we'll have an opportunity for each of the three groups to report out on its work during the year and also to meet informally with your colleagues. So we'd ask you to just consider that. And actually, why don't we do a quick show of hands. If you've already made plans, if you're already planning to attend the PACTech conference, could you please click on the raise your hand icon just so we can take a quick straw poll to see if anyone is currently planning to attend. So please click on the raise your hand icon if you've already made plans to attend the PACTech conference, or if that's something that you're considering. Okay, great. Thanks. So we'll send out a follow-up email as we get closer to that date. Basically, we're hoping that someone or a couple people from each of the PLC groups will be attending and will be able to help out with giving those updates and that report out at that session. So we'll be in touch as we get closer to the date. All right. Is there anyone who has any comments or questions or information that they'd like to share with us or with the group at this point in time before we get started? If you do, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll unmute your microphone, or if you would prefer to type it into the question or the chat field, you're welcome to do that at this point. We'll just pause for a moment and see if there's anyone that would like to share. Okay, I don't see anything at this point in time, but if something comes to mind during our session, please do feel free to raise your hand or enter a question into the chat box, and we'll be happy to bring that up. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started with some sharing and learning, and we'll keep this pretty informal. If you do have questions or feedback throughout while your colleagues are speaking, please jump in and ask those or provide feedback. We're going to start out just by doing a quick overview that a couple of you provided of your programs. And these are not in any particular order other than, I think, the order in which I received them. So we received a couple of responses, and why don't we go ahead and unmute Stephen Weber. Good morning, Steve. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for submitting your information, and I've incorporated it throughout our presentation today. But if you could just start out by giving us a review or an overview of your program there, the information you have here, as well as anything else you'd like to add, that would be great.
Uh, well, it's for the most part I have 10th through 12th grade students, although occasionally I'll get a 9th grade student if he's old enough to come to the Career Center, or she. And frequently they stay beyond 12th grade. They come back several years afterwards, depending upon their individualized educational plan. But our population in Berks County is pretty transient, so kids are in and out of the program all the time. They move from one state to the next, go back to Mexico for several months, come back again. You know, I might see them one semester this year and another semester next year. So it's hard to pinpoint how many students I have. I run in the neighborhood of 20 to 25, low 20s, but it's a lot of times the year starts at closer to 50, but they come and go pretty quick. Curriculum, like everybody else, I'm sure, our curriculum is all aligned with the Pennsylvania Department of Education Program of Study, and we just reviewed that again. The certifications that they can earn, we used to do the NCCER, but it got pretty expensive to do that, so we don't do that anymore. But we get PBA, OSHA, Vinyl Siding Institute, and Corian Installer. I don't think there's anything really unique about our program. We used to go out and build homes on site, but when the state increased the number of credits in math and science that the students needed to take to graduate, and we had to start having academic classes here at the school, the time just didn't work out for us. So now we do modular homes on site and send them out. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Steve? Anything that is similar at your location or different? Okay. Well, thank you for that. We will circle back with you on some of the later sections where we're talking about some specific examples. Okay. We'll move on then to Evan Baker, who shared this information with us. Let's test out your microphone. Good morning, Evan.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. Thanks again for sharing some information with us. And if you could do the same, just give us an overview of your program, any particular challenges or any interesting things that you're doing currently.
All right. As you can see, I have anywhere between 40 to 50 students for the year, usually around 25 at a time. We have 9th through 12th grade. The 9th graders begin the school year with an Explore program, and then about the third marking period, they are placed in their technical areas. There's only one instructor here, and we use the NCCR curriculum. The certifications the students get are OSHA, NCCR, and we have just started getting some certification through the state for weatherization, which includes DOE, lead safe practices, weatherization installer, so on and so forth. One of the unique things that we have is we are a comprehensive high school, so when it comes to different projects and assignments and lessons, I can work directly with a math teacher or an English teacher, and we can kind of work together developing those lessons. Right now we're getting big on the weatherization, the green technology, trying to work with some individuals in the community, different companies, to get these students trained in that field, because that field right now in this area is really taking off. So there's a lot of work for these guys out there. And right now about 80% of my senior class is already on co-op with the possibility of being employed after graduation.
Okay, great. Let's just see a show of hands quickly. Who else has a co-op opportunity for your students? Just click on the raise your hand, just curious to see. Looks like Tom, Steve, Nathan, John. Okay. Almost everybody has some opportunity. That's great. Okay. Does anyone have any questions, follow-up questions or comments for Evan? I don't see any, so we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you for sharing that, and we'll come back to you on your specific examples that you shared in just a moment. I'll show this. This is some information we received from Charlie. He is not able to join us on the call today, but wanted to share this information with you related to his program at the Career Institute of Technology. So I'll just give you a minute to take a look at that. And I also let him know that if anyone has any particular questions or comments related to the information that he shared, that you can follow up with him directly, or we can talk about it on our next webinar. I see here that he says he drives the school bus to get to and from their house site off-site, so maybe that would be a good question for him to follow up on as an icebreaker on our next meeting. Okay, at any rate, let's go ahead and jump ahead to employability skills. And basically what we were curious to find out is what types of activities or resources does your school or your program provide for your students, and certainly the co-op opportunity is something that would fit into this category. I'm going to go back to Steve and let him share with us some of the examples that he provided. Steve, could you go ahead and just give us an overview of some of the activities that you've listed here?
Well, one of the things I do with all the students in the beginning of the year, I have them fill out job applications. I get job applications from some of my advisory committee members and different employers, and I have them fill that out so that they get to practice filling out job applications. Some of them have a math and a writing test with it. It also helps me get to know the students right away at the beginning of the year, the new students. Then I do an individual interview with them and kind of go over their job application and show them where they could do better. And I do that at least once a year, every year, even with the seniors, even though they did it at least 2 times in the previous years. From there, we take that application and start building a resume. And in our curriculum, we have what we call job seeking keeping skills. They're not new things. I'm sure probably almost everyone has the same thing. And we do build a resume, we do mock interviews, applying for the job, cover letter, resume, and all those things. We don't really have job search skill workshops. We kind of handle that with our co-op program and what we do with the students in the classroom. I think they benefit more. I do something with my student chapter of the Homeowners Association where I have career day and career roundtable. Employers come in and talk to the kids, and the kids get to go out and shadow the employers. And I think that helps with that area quite a bit. I don't know, just, training them to go on the job is pretty much an ongoing process. We talk about it all the time. And the fellow that drives the bus with his students to the job site, I did that for a lot of years when we were building on site. It's an interesting, I have a lot of interesting stories about driving the bus to the job site. More power to him.
Okay.
And, I don't know, any other questions?
Does anyone have follow-up questions for Steve? Find my find the right section of my toolbar here. Let's see. Looks like we have. Okay. Yeah. So, Steve, there's a question about your portfolios. What types of examples or materials are included in there, and are they paper or electronic? How are those formatted?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm supposed to be doing them or getting the kids up to speed and doing them electronically. Right now, I'm doing them in a notebook. The kids all have to open a Google account, and our computer teacher helps them open that account. And once a quarter, I can take all their information and get it scanned up in the office and get it into the portfolio. I'm not going to kid you. I haven't gotten around to that. I'm still doing a portfolio pretty much the way I've done since we started. I have a folder, and on the front of the folder is printed all the tasks in the curriculum that they need to complete. As they complete that work, I check it off on the front of the folder and put the material in. We're required to do 15 minutes of literacy and numeracy every day now with the students, and they're required to do writing assignments. I have them write articles for our local home builders newsletter, Home Builder Association newsletter, and those are all the things we put in the folder. With the student chapter, we go out on Restoring Hope, build volunteer work, and do some other community service work around the community. We document that and take pictures of it, put all of that in their portfolio. I take pictures of them and video of them working on the building, on our modular home, or the little hand tool project that they start in their first year, and we keep all of that with the portfolio, as well as those job applications and things that I talked about earlier. That's about it.
Sorry, I had myself on mute there. So great. Well, thank you for sharing some more details on that. Are there any other questions or comments for Steve at this point? If so, just raise your hand or enter it into the question box if you don't have audio today. Are those portfolios, is that incorporated into their grade, or is it, I mean, essentially, I guess the parts of it are part of their grade, and then it's compiled?
Well, almost everything that goes in there was done for grade.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a writing report, they get a grade for it. They do, well, I forgot to, we do daily journaling, and they turn their journals into me once a week on a Friday, and I correct them, review them, and they receive a grade for that. So pretty much everything that goes in there is for grade, with the exception of community service work. That's kind of an extracurricular or over and above thing.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thanks. We'll go ahead and move on to the next example, and I think Steve shared with us some other items for the other sections, so we'll come back to that. Evan, I'm going to unmute you again, and could you tell us a bit about some of the ideas that you shared related to employability or work skills?
Sure. We use, like I said before, we use the NCCR book, which has a section on employability and all that, but the activities that they wanted us to do weren't quite enough. So what my students do, we spend about a week on this topic, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on the size of the class. But their first task is that they have to go out and they have to find a job, whether it's looking in the newspaper, looking online, using CareerLink or some other kind of job application or job search engine or anything like that. They have to be carpentry related, and they have to be close enough that they could get to. And then they have to do a little bit of research on the company as well, try to find out if they have a mission statement, what kind of jobs they did, if they have a website, you know, do they have any examples of the work they've done, and get familiar with the company. Once they do that, the next step is really to develop their resume and cover letter to target each one of those jobs. They have to find 3 of them. They have to write 3 different resumes, 3 different cover letters, you know, applying directly what they're applying for. Then they start to work on their interviews, getting ready for the interview. You know, I have the 5 most common questions that are asked during an interview that they go through. They kind of prepare in advance and answer just in case they're asked those questions. And then can you switch to the next slide? And then we go over some interviewing skills, what to bring with you, bring your portfolio, what to wear, what to expect, what is it going to be like, what are some different types of interviews, are they doing a behavioral interview, is it just a questioning interview. Once they go through all that, then they have to come to school all ready to go with all their stuff, dressed up, and we go through a mock interview where I sit down and I conduct an interview with them on one of the jobs that they selected they want to go for. And once we do the interview, there's a rubric to follow, and then we sit down and have a conference afterwards on some things they need to improve, some things they did well, just to get them ready. Once that's done, then they go out when there's a co-op job available, and they actually go through the interview process and hopefully get a job. And usually it works. I haven't had but maybe 1 or 2 people not get the job within the last 4 years. We're going well with that. One thing I would like to add to it is to have maybe my OAC members or somebody from the field come in and conduct a mock interview during school time. That way it's an outside person really giving them feedback on what they're looking for, and I think that'll be helpful as well. That's about if anybody has any questions.
Hey, Evan, this is Michelle with Meter Consulting. One question I had was just as far as kind of the timeline and the time frame. When do you start doing all this in the school year, and about how long does it take to kind of get to the point where they're doing the actual interview?
Oh, okay. I usually start at the beginning of senior year, and then I'll go over it. You know, we might do several interviews depending on the student, depending on the level. It usually takes, by the time they get to the actual interview, it usually takes about a week to a week and a half. You know, by the time they do all the research on the company, get their stuff together and practice a little bit. But once they get to that point, they really feel more comfortable with it. They know the ropes. I think it's a confidence booster for them, you know, because when I went for my first interview, there was, you know, no training or anything like that. So I was a little bit nervous, and for them, I think it really helps to put them at ease and for it.
Right, right. How, like, where are the students, would you say, when they kind of first start out with this? Like, where are their skills in terms of interviewing or even knowing how to look through classifieds for jobs? Like, do you see a big variation among your students? Or are they all pretty much at the same point when they start out?
There are some, a little bit of variations, but for the most part, they wouldn't even know what a classified section is. They do know Craigslist, but that's about it. They wouldn't know how to open up a newspaper and look for the job section. And they're so, I mean, they know how to search on Monster and all that. If it's electronic, you know, they can find it. But when it comes back to the old-fashioned way, and there still are jobs posted that way, and a lot of good ones, they struggle with that. When it comes to the interviewing, I mean, most of them struggle with how to shake a hand. You know, they don't know how to do a firm handshake. They don't know how to look somebody in the eye when they're talking to them. And this is even after, you know, even after we've gone through, because my students do presentations all through their career with me. We go over handshakes probably the second day that they start my class. But even after all that, when they're put in this situation, they seem to be very timid. And they're not sure what to do because they know this is the next step in their life. You know, high school's over, now we're moving on. So.
All right. Great, thank you.
Good questions. Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay. Well, Evan, that sounds like a great program, and I'm sure your students are really benefiting. So thank you for sharing that with us. All right. Next, I'm just showing you the comments that Charlie provided. Again, he's not able to join us today, but here's some of his ideas as to some of the activities that he works on, very similar to some of the things we've heard about today. And now we'd just like to share with you a couple resources that we identified or that had been pointed out to us by some of the other participants or even some of the other PLC members. These are some links that you might want to take a look at. This, again, as with all of our PowerPoint presentations from the webinars, this information will be posted on the SAS website, so you'll be able to get the links, the website links, directly from that, so don't feel that you need to write it down right now. But some handouts and some resources that you might find useful. In terms of the class starters and enders, I'm actually going to show those to you. And I apologize that it's a little bit blurry, just had to do with the format when I put it into the slide. But basically what these are useful for, and these class starters were developed by the Georgia CTE Resource Center, is they're one-page sheets that can be used either in the first few minutes of a class period or the last few minutes, just to fill some time, but also give students some quick activities and some questions to think about after they've read the information. So this particular one relates to applying for a job. The second one I'm showing is related to the job search, and just to spur some questions and some thinking on their part, you might consider looking at these and incorporating them. All right. The next topic that we had for today is entrepreneurship. And I believe that we had some information shared by Steve. So once again, why don't we go back to Steve. Okay, Steve, I've unmuted you. So if you could tell us a bit about your Career Roundtable and your Career Day partnership. I think these are really interesting programs that you have.
I think we're pretty fortunate. We have a really good relationship with our local chapter of the Home Builder Association. And we have a student chapter here. I don't know, I've had that for 15, 20 years or something like that. They partner with us and do a whole lot of things. They have our kids come to their association meetings. They come in, we do this career roundtable at least once a year. I have 9 different trade areas in the student chapter, carpentry, cabinet making, electrical, plumbing, bricklaying, building property maintenance, architectural drawing, landscape, horticulture, and all the construction-oriented trades. So what I try and do is get an employer that represents each one of those trades to come in for a day. We place an employer in each one of the 9 areas, and they speak with those students for 15 to 20 minutes. At the end of that time, they rotate and go to another class, and we do 3 rotations in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. We have a half day about school, so it's the morning session students, they go back to their home school. We get different students in the afternoon. And at these roundtables, they'll talk to the kids about how they got started in business, and even talk about their business plans and things. And they usually start to talk to them about first entering the trade, how to apply for a job, how to get the job, and then working your way up through the trade and into your own business. So we do most of that work through the Home Builder Association. Our students are allowed to go to any of the association educational opportunities that are there for the builder members. So that's a valuable partnership for us. So do we offer any workshops specifically for entrepreneurship? Nah, not really. I mean, I do it through the home builders, but the rest of the school, I'm not sure what they do. I also used to, I put together a career day, and the Home Builders Association would publicize it, advertise it, and talk to all their members, and they'd sign up members to come in here to the school on a given day and pick up students and take them out on the job with them. On those days, we were usually matching about 30 to 35 kids with 35 different employers, and they would take them out to their office, show them what the office work was like, introduce them to their office staff. then take them out to the jobs, introduce them to the project managers and some of the workers, and probably show them several different jobs. It was it's a real valuable opportunity. It does a couple of really neat things. It helps to validate what we're trying to tell the kids, because now they start to see that what we're talking about isn't just here in school. They see it out on the job and see it with the real employers. The employers really kind of reinforce the things that we're doing, and a lot of those people are on our advisory committees as well. And those kids, all our kids are still kind of searching. They're not sure what they want to do. For some of them, they come back really charged up. Man, I can't believe what I saw. I really want to put a lot of effort into it. And they come back and really take off. It helps them get energized and excited about what they're doing here at the Career Center. And there's other students who come back and say, man, it's just like this guy's saying it is. I'm not sure I want to do this. But either way, it helps. It helped them make a decision, and maybe they'll make the right moves. There are a couple neat programs. And
that's great.
Other than that, we spend more time probably trying to talk to them about getting the job, how they should dress, pull your pants up, don't wear your iPod earphones, don't take your mother to a job interview, which they do a lot of. And all those kind of things, getting them to act professionally to go out and get the job. Okay?
Right. All right. Well, thank you. Does anyone have questions or feedback related to that? Let's take a quick look. While I'm looking at that, Steve, I'm curious. Was the relationship already established with the Home Builders Association in your area when you joined the staff there, or was that something that you really had to build from scratch? From thinking,
I pretty much had to develop that from scratch. I went through the Home Builders Apprenticeship program way back when, so I was familiar with them and familiar with some of their people, and some of the builders that I worked for and worked with over the years were association members. So I was always kind of in contact with them. But one fortunate thing, that the fellow that was the executive officer or the director of the Home Builders Association then, he liked canoeing, I liked canoeing. We'd get on the water and we'd go do some white water, go paddle the Lehigh or the Schuylkill or whatever. And while we'd be paddling, I'd be bugging them about what can we partner with to do with my kids. And, we actually came up with a lot of really great ideas. And some of the stuff that I'm talking about, we hatched on some of our canoe trips.
so those informal relationships are very helpful in that respect then?
Yes.
Some of that. Okay. Great.
Stephen, this is Michelle. I was just wondering, how long have you been running this program for? About how many school years?
Oh, more than 15, I'd say. I don't exactly know. I want to say maybe I started it early 90s.
Oh, okay. So quite some time. Great.
All right. Well, thanks again for sharing that with us. We'll just jump ahead to share with you some resources that have been shared with us related to entrepreneurship. Some of these are general, or I guess most of these are general either curricula or lessons or information that you might consider looking at, information about how to start a business or write a business plan, things of that nature. Oops. So just put that out there as an opportunity for you to look at that. And again, these will all be posted on the SAS website. And let's see, moving ahead, looks like we're doing fine on time, so we'll go ahead and just do an overview of some test review strategies. And Steve, we'll go ahead and put you back on the microphone. Hopefully you're not tired of talking to us yet, but if you would just share with us some of the information you have here about how you review and prepare students for their testing.
Well, Our learning guides, I have a lot of great handout sheets, and I know I keep talking about this Oklahoma curriculum that, man, I started using in the 80s. And with the exception of some of it had to be updated for now, it's still some of the best curriculum I've ever used. And I've used the NCCER and the PDA and all kinds of stuff. But these learning guides are really great with pictures and handouts and supplemental information, and they have the crossword puzzles and word searches, and so they're really neat. But now we all have a smart board, and we're using the smart boards, and there are a lot of games in that smart board. I'm not even close to knowing how to use all of them. But I have developed some kind of smart board game for every one of my learning guides, at least for the vocabulary or terms and definitions of each section, whatever you want to call it. Either a Jeopardy game or some of it's like Hangman, and there's just a lot of different games that are right in the smartboard that you can use. The kids seem to enjoy that pretty much. Yeah, we spend a little bit of time every chance we get doing those games. You can't do it for too long because it gets to be a little too much play, but those things, they see it over and over again, and they're receptive to doing that.
Right.
For the NOCTI, we do use the NOCTI website. We get the little booklet, the practice study guide for the written test. And actually, the things that they do in shop, they're the practical portion of the test, laying out a stair, laying out a ramp, or laying out a wall. We do that all the time, and we do it to prepare them to go out and build modular homes. So I think all of the things that we do in shop are just practice for the NOCTI all along. Do I make it more specific to the NOCTI test for the seniors right before they take the test? Yeah, I do. I try and prepare them for that a little bit more and direct their practice towards what the NOCTI test is.
All right. Great. Thank you. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to share related to preparing students, dealing with test anxiety or anything in that respect? We have a quiet group today. I guess everyone's in learning mode. All right. Well, what I'll share with you here is just some information that Charlie provided. It's a pretty similar, looking at the NOCTI study guides and doing some review strategies and so forth. And then finally, looking at integrating science. And Steve, we really appreciate your all your participation today. If I could put you on the spot one more time to just share with us your idea here about talking about natural science and lumber products, we'd really appreciate to hear that.
Well, okay. Yeah, I really wasn't hoping I was going to be the only source.
I know.
Learn some things, you know.
Right.
But okay. Yeah, well, I'm all about it. I love working outside. That's one of the reasons why I love being a carpenter. And I like the dendrology and the study of trees and all that. So I don't get real intense with the kids about it, but I do talk to them about the fact that hardwoods come from deciduous trees, softwoods come from conifers or needle-bearing trees. We talk about the growth cycle of a tree and the growth rings and what they represent. We talk about their value to the building industry, but also to the value of our quality of life as far as renewable resources and the quality of air and how they just make life so much nicer. And I get into a little bit of that when we start talking about the lumber we use to build the homes or build the cabinets that we use. And, you know, I try and get them to remember when they took some of their natural science classes at their home schools. I'm not sure how many of them remember, but we talk about a lot of those kind of things. I also kind of like physics, and I talk about the basic tools that we use and how all our tools are really based off those basic tools that they've been using for eons. Fulcrum, lever axle, the wheel, inclined plane, you do the same amount of work to go from one floor to the next, from the first floor to the second floor. You can do it 3 different ways. You can go up a ladder and exert that energy over a quick period of time, but you're still going up an inclined plane. You could go up a long ramp, which makes the work easier to do, but spreads it out over a longer distance. Or you could build a comfortable stairway, which is kind of the happy medium between the two. And we talk about those things. Talk about what's involved when we lift and stand a wall, and what functions a beam does, and how it does sag a little bit. There's a little bit of deflection. So as we get to those different phases of construction, we talk about those things.
Okay.
I hope, I know myself when I was in school, if I didn't have a real-life practical application to relate things to, I didn't think much of it or didn't remember much. I might have memorized it for the test. I think when the kids see how things really play into the scheme of things, it does help them with their academics because it puts a real-life example in place of just some theory or some memorization. At least I'd like to think it does. I know it does for me. Okay?
Right. Okay. Well, thanks again, Steve. And I'm actually going to see Evan. I'd like to see if I can put you on the spot here for a minute, just because you mentioned that your school is a comprehensive school, and I'm curious to know if you try to incorporate any science, or if perhaps your students ever have an aha moment when they're in your class to say, hey, this is something we were talking about in one of our science classes. So I'm going to unmute your microphone. And did you have any thoughts on that, Evan, or do you see your students making any connections?
I think they do. I mean, I haven't really collaborated directly with a science teacher yet, because now with the Keystone exams we're in the transition period and all that good stuff. But there are aha moments, like when we're talking simply about a hammer. At that time, some of the kids are in like physical science, and we can talk about torque and rotational force and that sort of thing. And teaching them how to hold the hammer properly, they do make the connection. That's one example that I thought of off the top of my head, and it does happen. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Does anyone else have any thoughts or ideas, or maybe even some examples that we haven't mentioned already as to ways to sort of informally weave some of those lessons or some of those concepts into your lessons? And just so you know, this question about integrating science, this was just something that came up based on some feedback on our webinar response forms as to folks asking the question if anyone was doing this. This isn't anything that the Bureau of CTE was pushing down on us or anything like that. We just were, in fact, all the topics today came from the webinar response forms with colleagues asking, well, what are folks doing in these particular areas? Okay. So with that, why don't we just take a moment to share some science resources with you. These are a couple websites where you can find some information about green building, sustainable materials, wood and lumber, things of that nature. If you're interested in taking a look at that and perhaps incorporating some of that into your lessons. Here's another of the class starters and enders, and I know this is not specifically related to carpentry, but I thought since it was in the trade area, it might be something of interest for you. It's a worksheet talking about the origin of bricks and the composition of bricks. So it might be something to take a look at, and perhaps you you could use it in your lessons at some point. Additionally, some general science resources that go into a lot of the different disciplines, earth science, physics, life science, things of that nature. And then just a few final resources to share with you. These are sort of general information. If you haven't seen the website for the Vocational Resource Center before, you might want to take a look at that. There's a career guide for many different CTE areas, including carpentry, and there are a lot of links to resources on this page, including job descriptions, skill requirements, some materials and resources related to tools and equipment, safety, even construction-related math. So this is a good place if you're looking for some specific resources or some information about some of these areas. Also, some additional resources related to safety and tools, some handouts and information that you might find useful. This particular resource, CTE Online, there are some model courses and lessons available related to wood technology and cabinet making that you might want to take a look at. And there's a link provided on the PowerPoint for this. And then finally, some miscellaneous resources. The first one is a lesson plan that comes out of Arkansas, where students are walked through a process of being a building detective. So looking at a historic building and describing the structure and some of the different aspects of the building, which looked somewhat interesting. And then finally, and this actually leads into our wrap-up and talking about our next meeting, the math problem of the month, which is provided by the Geometry and Construction program. This website has several different math problems or scenarios related to construction that you might want to take a look at as something to look at with your students. But the Geometry and Construction program is something that will be the topic of our meeting next month. So just to give you a preview of that and talk about next steps. So our next meeting will take place on May 24th, which is a Thursday at 1:30 p.m. And that is, we are planning on that as our final webinar for this year. And our topic is, as I mentioned, we'll have representatives from the program Geometry and Construction talk about their program and share some of the resources that they have available. There's the website if you're interested in taking a look at it in advance. For those of you who are pursuing Act 48 credit, the date for your webinar response forms to be completed and posted or emailed to us is April 26th. And if you do have additional lessons or resources, or if you have links to websites even that you think would be of value or useful to your colleagues on the PLC, please continue to forward those to us, and we will share them either by posting them onto the SAS website, or if we have the opportunity to include them in our session next month, we will be happy to share them as well. So with that, that concludes our program for today. Does anyone have any follow-up questions or comments that they'd like to share with the group before we close out? If so, please raise your hand or enter that into the question or the chat box. I don't see any, so thank you for your participation today. Thank you especially to Steve and Evan for sharing with us the program overviews of your programs, as well as some great examples of resources and activities that you're doing with your students in those areas to really help them develop their skills, both on the technical side and on the employability, work skills side, and helping them be prepared for whatever their futures might hold. So we appreciate your participation today. Thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to meeting with you on May 24th. Thanks, everyone.